Video game parodies, the zenith of all internet comedy. Okay, so maybe that was a disingenuous way to open up this video, but at one point, video game parodies still had a distinct charm and personality to them, and it wasn't extremely reliant on the source material to carry its comedy. I believe that there is no one more emblematic in this genre than Arin Hanson, more commonly known as Egoraptor. Egoraptor is pretty much synonymous with video game-related content on the web. From the Awesome series to Game Grumps, he has had his hands in quite a bit of things, and his influence continues to grow to this day. However, I feel that the Awesome series is among one of the most influential works in internet animation and completely defined the subsequent genre. For those who somehow haven't seen any of these cartoons before, the Awesome series takes a video game and basically makes it in a nutshell scenario, or puts well-known characters in a scenario that doesn't operate under the logic from the universe it's based on. You're probably saying this sounds like every video game parody and humor ever. What are you getting at? While you may be right, because this is made by Egoraptor, these traits are thrown into an amplifier filled with the nuances of his personality and artistry. Firstly, there's something genuinely different about the way he approaches the source material. Oftentimes, Ego's writing isn't entirely focused and organized, and this is for the best. There is more of a nonsensical nature to the way he presents his comedy. It's extremely loose in structure, and a lot of the jokes seem to fly out of left field. The writing really doesn't make it a priority to be clever, just to be fast and abrasive. This may be the ridiculous breakneck nature of his comedy, the amazing expressions on the character's face, or just the focus of the jokes altogether. This alternative approach to tackling gaming comedy makes it memorable. To further my point here, I'm going to resort to the worst writing technique in my arsenal: comparisons. I hate even having to do this because I don't want to insult Arin's work, but let's take a look at Egoraptor's cartoons versus, say, I don't know, Racist Mario. For those who don't know, Racist Mario is a cartoon from Flash Gits that is pretty goddamn terrible. I personally hate this video more than just about anything. Seriously, I have so much vitriol against it. But you know why? Because of just how blatantly lazy, ingenuine, and unapologetically awful it is. It also serves as the best example of how video game humor can be objectively the worst thing to happen to all of humanity in Western civilization, next to Ronald Reagan and the discontinuation of Oreos.
It must be a Mario. He takes racing too seriously.
He takes everything too seriously.
You see, Racist Mario literally takes all the predictable jokes out of its hat and does it while wanking itself off. Even the animation is extremely dull, and I really hate having to say that. Animation, no matter what, takes a lot of effort. I get that tweening like this is super efficient in the animation process, but it makes everything look horribly homogeneous with other people who use this technique. This is going on another small tangent, but what makes Egoraptor's works funnier and ultimately more compelling is the attention to the facial expressions on the characters.
There are deep lacerations in the sternum where aliens have taken over his body!
What?
They're shooting X-ray beams out of their radioactive supercores! Use your zapping gun to stop them!
Oh my blue 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 blowie!
Nintendo!
The mentality while making this video was just knowing how much views it was going to make and consequently all the money. It's so reliant on making corny and predictable jokes using just the source material. Even though this video is talking about the influence of Egoraptor, you might be able to blame him for this. He helped video game parodies become massively popular. It's the same thing as people copying the angry video game nerd. Many people forget that it takes the charm and talent to do so. Egoraptor's series exhumes style and personality, because it differentiated itself from the source material he was parodying. I constantly say this, but parodies are only good when they're not entirely referential, which is integral in Ego's work. While Arin does drench his cartoons in the irony we find in a lot of other parodies like this, he manages to contrast it with fast pacing and ludicrous over-the-top mannerisms and quirks. The purpose of this juxtaposition is to highlight how Egoraptor's impassioned handcraft approach really helped cement his animation legacy, and still ultimately affect others. It's actually really hard to talk about Arin's work without comparing it to others due to his influence in web animation. Video game parody shorts are so plentiful, yet they are often done very poorly and only meant to elicit a feeling of inclusivity for even getting the reference. There really isn't anything wrong with this if this is what you're going for when making one of these, But personally, I feel that satire and parody can serve more of a bigger purpose than we give it credit. Throughout this video, I do keep saying that ego has influenced a lot of creators in the subsequent genre, but how much? Well, you know, for starters, have you ever heard the term
Egoraptor style!
And have you ever heard someone making a web animation explicitly making fun of this concept? Well, it exists, and it's actually the greatest thing ever made by man.
I made you! You're welcome! Remember electricity? Ding dong! Hello?
The actual reason this Flash animation was made was because Spaz Kid was accused of stealing Egoraptor's style when he did his parodies. Despite this idea being ridiculous, it actually means something more. It helps illuminate the impact of Egoraptor and just how popular he was at the time, at least with his animations. His animation style isn't something new at all. Egoraptor is heavily inspired by loose anime drawing styles. Unfortunately, on the internet, if something even looks or feels remotely similar, people feel the need to call you out on not being original. Newsflash, no one is original. I wouldn't be doing video essays if it wasn't for all the amazing film YouTubers being analytical about filmmaking. That's probably my direct inspiration. As for Egoraptor, there are a ton of people who have that colorful style because it works aesthetically well with fast animation. Is Spaz Kid actually inspired by Egoraptor? I'd say yes, but that doesn't mean Egoraptor isn't wholly original in making the style. Ideas and creativity is always reactionary to what is around you and what you consume at the time. Besides his animation style, Egoraptor's awesome series wasn't just limited to him. You see, other people created entries in this series, including current Game Grumps cohort Ross, known as Rubber Ninja on Newgrounds, and created his own entry into the series. And I can't show it cause it's porn. Thanks, Ross. Other big names that you might recognize that have contributed to this are Max G, more commonly known as Hot Diggity Demon.
Broke the window again. Hey family, having breakfast? Most important meal of the day. Can I have some of your milk, Speed?
And the God King of Stank himself, Chris O'Neill, or Oni-NG.
What? Fucking hell? Okay, let's see.
This also doesn't even cover all of the other entries from other creators paying tribute to the series. Like I mentioned earlier, it's completely okay to be inspired, and I think Arin did something a little more than just inspire people to make video game parodies. Arin essentially made a structure in which to make video game parodies by. Really, before this, there wasn't really much of a structure set in place to make these parodies, so Egoraptor just kinda helped make one. What Egoraptor has contributed to Flash and web animation as a whole is unprecedented, even if it was mostly coming from a genre that had fallen out of taste for some in recent years. Egoraptor just made silly cartoons about a hobby he loved. Little did he know that this outreach would be monumental beyond his wildest dreams. He may not be seen animating or drawing much anymore, but his works after this still managed to inspire and influence creators. Yes, I'm willing to debate that Game Grumps and Sequelitis are influential, but I'd rather save that for another day. But for now, go back to the awesome series with all of this in mind.